Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to mumble! Introducing first, in the black corner, in his trademark office suit jacket tie, with a record of over 8,000 tax returns and 1,000 vast statements lodged, standing 5'11" and weighing in at... He is the man with the tax plan, the sultan of spreadsheets, the baron of vast statements, the king of ka-ching. Hailing from Ballarat, Victoria, Peter Angel! And in the white corner, sporting his struggling artist casuals, with a record of 1.5 feature-length films, 1 web series and numerous award-winning shorts, standing 5'10" and weighing in at... The Kubrick of Claptrap, the Mac Daddy of the MacGuffin, the Caesar of subtext, the champion of all things indie, the arrogant know-it-all Israeli bastard, now hailing from Melbourne, Victoria, the unpronounceable... How do you say this? Itai Guberman! Sit back and enjoy as they trade opinion jabs, fighting for their favourites and battling politely through the best and worst of... well, anything they see fit, really. The accountant versus the filmmaker. The financial consultant versus the artist. What can possibly go wrong? Tune in and find out on the Best and Worst podcast, where it ain't all black and white.
Hello and welcome to the Best and Worst podcast. My name's Peter Angel. I'm talking to Itai Guberman, and today we're talking about the Coen brothers films.
An episode I've been waiting for a while.
Yeah, some really, really good films. Even the bottom couple, that 2 or 3, they're not bad films, but some really, really good films.
They're all decent movies at the very least.
Yep.
My bottom maybe 3 out of the 18 that they've made are probably sitting there more because I expected better.
Yeah,
and they somehow kind of, disappointed in a way. But my top 15 are all excellent films.
Yeah, and look, I've pretty much found the same. I found the top probably 5 or 6 for me. They sort of struck a chord and stuff, so they weren't too bad as far as putting them in some sort of an order. But everything from there down to 15, it was almost a nonsense for me to rate them or rank them because it was just so difficult.
Yeah, and I know I don't like throwing the word around, but I know people do love using it when talking about films, talking about a masterpiece. But with the Coen brothers, it's like almost, I'd say, top 8 to me are kind of near masterpiece status. Like they were that good. Some of them because of that sort of artistic thing they like to do, and the others, even if it's a sort of a straight story and it has their own sort of quirk on it. But yeah, I don't think there was any one film that had like terrible acting in any way, or the cinematography was, any less than amazing. So, as far as the production value, they're all fantastic.
Well, they are, and they do a lot of the bits themselves, don't they? They both direct, they both write, they both edit. Is it Roderick
Jane is the pseudonym they use, who was nominated, maybe won an Academy Award. I can't remember the story, but for cinematography, the majority of the films is by Roger Deakins, who's just amazing.
Yeah.
So they also have a lot of actors, come back in a lot of films.
They do. John Goodman does a lot of work for him, doesn't he? And
yeah, Torturo.
Frances McDormand, because she's the wife of, I think it's Joel, so obviously she'd probably work a little bit cheaper.
Yeah. Torturo and Buscemi and John Polito, and yeah, there's so many of them that just keep coming back in different ones.
What, Clooney's been in a few of them?
Yeah, true. Yeah, no, just awesome actors, and obviously their sets must be great to work on if all those people are coming back.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of these guys and just love their take, the way they see film, the way they are as storytellers. There's always something there. Yeah, I'm curious to see how your rating is and how they did budget-wise. I tried not to look into that. I leave that to you.
Yes.
It's your field of expertise.
Exactly right. Well, we'll start with that, as usual. I'll start with IMDb. So Lady Killers at 18, Intolerable Cruelty at 17, both on 6.2 out of 10.
For those two, I would say fair enough.
Yeah, I would too. I think that I might bump them up a little bit to 6.5 or, something, but we'll get to our list later. But They are towards the bottom end rather than the top end for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Coming in at number 16 is Hail Caesar at 6.3, which for me is a bit of a surprise. It's very low.
Very low, very low. I rated it much higher on all accounts, out of 10, and also as far as the ranking.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Look, it's in my top 10. So for it to be 16th, it's silly, I think.
Scraped into mine as well. But but I think it's a fantastic film. Like I said, if the 15 are all great films and it made it into top 10, it's pretty great.
Yeah, that's right. And then at number 15, Burn After Reading, with a score of 7, as is A Serious Man, also 7 on IMDb.
I agree with Burn After Reading. I completely disagree with A Serious Man.
You rate it a bit higher?
Yeah, a fair bit higher. Burn After Reading is fairly close to where I have it. They also, I think, have it as exactly 7 out of 10. Is that right?
Yes. Well, with rounding, 7, 7.0.
And that's the thing. For me, it's more about a 7.5. And it isn't, because it is, again, in my top 15 that I think are all great movies. I really enjoyed Burn After Reading, but I agree with it being in the sort of lower, third.
Yeah. Then at number 13 is A Hudsucker Proxy at 7.2.
That's high.
Well, I'd probably maybe agree with that. Maybe it's 7.2, but it shouldn't be any higher, should it?
Yeah, I would go maybe 7, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think it's more towards the bottom 3.
Yeah. Then at number 12 is Raising Arizona at 7.3.
I will spoil and say that's exactly where I have it.
I would rank it higher than 7.3. I think it still stands up.
I don't exactly disagree. I mean, it's in my top 15, and like I said, they're all great films. It's one of those comedies that I still find amusing, and I really enjoy the performances in it, especially Holly Hunter.
Yep.
And also some of the supporting characters. But yeah, as far as the story and the whole thing as a film altogether, I think they have better work. But again, it's no slight on Raising Arizona. I still love that film. I just know a lot of people rate it probably more towards their top 5, which I disagree with. But yeah.
Yep. So also on 7.3 is The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Okay.
So that's one I disagree with. I rate that very highly. I watched it relatively recently. It's only, I guess, come out the last couple of years. So I think 7.3 for me is a bit low.
Yeah, it's in my top 10, but not that much higher. But the thing is, I would rate it closer to an 8 out of 10, if not 8 out of 10. Yeah, I just thought it was that great. I've only seen it for the first time less than a week ago. And I was very, very impressed. It's also very different to the other films because it's a collection of stories. So it's kind of like an anthology, which is the first one, I believe, that they have, where they directed all the stories.
Yeah, and I would normally rate anthologies quite a bit lower, but this one, very good.
Yeah, it was very kind of poetic. There was just fantastic performances. Again, the way it's shot, very, very interesting, again, take in the way they tell a story. And so some of those stories were, they didn't have a lot going on in them necessarily, but they said a lot.
Yeah.
So, I really like that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Then at number 10 is The Man Who Wasn't There. That's with 7.5.
Let's just say I've got it higher.
Yeah. And then at number 9, Inside Llewyn Davis at 7.5. Probably a bit high. Should be a bit lower than that.
I think it should be a lot higher than that, but we'll be talking about that later, I'm sure.
At number 8 was Blood Simple with 7.6, the same score as True Grit, 7.6 as well.
I don't disagree on the score. I do disagree on the rating because, again, I scored all the films a lot higher out of 10. So Blood Simple for me might be also somewhere around an 8, but it's lower on my list as far as ranked. Out of their films. Yeah. But it's a fantastic film. It's their lowest, I should say, production value-wise film because it was their first, but it is fantastic. You just mentioned True Grit, and I'm going to say it's got actually a lot more grit to it than other films because it's just a little less polished. But yeah, just fantastic. And you could already see how great storytellers they are. And yeah, I would definitely, it's very close to an 8. And they have it at 7.6, which is kind of fair enough.
Yep.
But I would go still a bit higher, although I would go lower on the ranking.
So then at number 6, Barton Fink with 7.7.
Okay, that's a little low for my liking. I really like that film. And I would also maybe even like close to a full point.
Yep.
8.5 plus for me. Yep.
Also at 7.7 is Miller's Crossing and Oh Brother, We're Out There.
Okay. It's a bit high for me for the ranking wise for Miller's Crossing. Oh Brother is about right.
Yeah, like Miller's Crossing, well, we may or may not get to it later, but yeah, for me, I don't think it's in my top 10. It's a very good film. A lot of people rate it very highly, but for me, it just didn't really speak to me. It wasn't one of the films that just grabbed me, and I thought I'd like to see that again and again and again.
Well, I do rate it highly as far as, again, out of 10, I think it's about an 8 out of 10, but it didn't crack my top 10, which again goes to show how strong the top 10 are.
So then at number 3, well, it's almost a three-way tie, but that's with rounding, it's a three-way tie. So Fargo is 8.1, the Big Lebowski also 8.1, and No Country for Old Men 8.1 as well. We check next week, it might be one of the other two, who knows? But for now, the number one Coen brothers film, on IMDb at least, is No Country for Old Men.
I can't say I disagree with those. Argue that too much as a top 3. It's not the same exactly as my top 3, but it's close. For me, those films are like nudging 9s, and some of them are over 9 out of 10 or about 9 out of 10, which is huge. I rarely rate films that high.
Yeah. So for any other filmmaker, an 8.1 would be fantastic. But as you say, for these guys, that should be one of their middle-of-the-road type of films. Yeah.
It's just the standard is mind-boggling, I think. And again, a lot of their films were not massive successes. Actually, we're about to talk about that as far as takings and budgets and all that.
Yeah, that's right. So as far as return on investment, the worst one was the Hudsucker Proxy. 7% return on investment, $40 million budget, and it only brought in $2.8 million at the box office.
Yeah, I can completely understand all of that. The budget I can understand because they kind of built a certain world. Also the fact that it had Paul Newman sort of when he was still at the height, I think, of his popularity.
Yeah,
maybe he's starting to kind of peter out, but he was still, a massive name at the time. Tim Robbins,
Jennifer Jason Leigh, Charles Durning.
Yeah, good cast. Even Bruce Campbell. So I can understand the budget because, again, they had to create that kind of world, and also it's kind of like a period piece, I guess you can call it. They're always more expensive, but I can also understand the takings because I enjoyed it less than a lot of their other films.
Yeah, that was the second highest budget for their whole careers. Even films like True Grit.
Wow. In
were
94?
less. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. The only one with a higher budget was Intolerable Cruelty, which we'll get to in a bit.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And then you look at some of these other films and you just think, how could they have spent $40 million?
May have been a timing thing because Intolerable Cruelty was 2003, and they did bring in Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones and Jeffrey Rush, all sort of at the sort of height of their money-earning days. So may have been salaries because aside for that, I don't see where all that money went.
No, that's right. And we'll get to that anyway. But yeah, for Hudsucker Proxy, though, $40 million and only $2.8 million at the box office. So their 17th most profitable film with a return on investment of 36% was Miller's Crossing. $14 million budget, $5.1 million at the box office. So less than half the budget, about double at the box office. Still not a success, but...
Yeah, no, I would hazard a guess that it broke even for them over time, with DVD sales and all the rest of it, TV, blah. It's a very, very kind of art housey film. I'm surprised it costs so little because, it's a period piece and they tend to cost more, but I assume that most of these actors did not take much of a pay for this one. And there's a lot of really, really good actors in it.
Yeah, there are. So you can, I guess, see where the money was spent, but yeah, not a success at the box office with that one.
Yeah. Albert Finney and Gabriel Byrne.
Yeah.
And Marsha K. Harden, in those sort of top 3 roles. It had Torturo again and a little bit of Buscemi. So, a lot of others as well. Very good film.
That's right. And then their 16th most profitable film with a 69% return on investment was Barton Fink. $9 million budget and $6.2 million at the box office.
Wow. Yeah, for similar reasons, I can understand that. Again, very art housey. I think a lot of people probably didn't even get it. One of those films where people probably would have watched all the way to the end and kind of half suffered through it and then saw the ending and just went, I don't understand what I just watched. It's a bit of a high concept kind of film, where the meaning is in subtext. It's all very sort of meta, which, again, for the general public, it's not really a big one. But I think it's one of their best films.
Interesting about those 3 is that they're the least successful films. Mm-hmm. They were in 1994, 1990, and 1991. They are sandwiched between Fargo, which was in 1996, and Raising Arizona in 1987, and those two are 2 of their most successful films.
Yeah. But yeah, again, they're very, it's not exactly hit and miss, but they make very, very different films.
Yeah.
So I would assume that a film like, say, True Grit is probably in the top 3, maybe top 5.
Yep.
Yeah, because again, that's a more film that appeals more to the general public. It's a straight out Western, it's a remake of another Western. It's not as much, into that kind of quirky style that people may or may not go for.
No, that's true. True. Well, talking about quirky styles, at number 15 was The Man Who Wasn't There.
I don't think it's that quirky. I think it's a bit noir.
Yeah, black and white.
A lot noir. Yeah. And it's one of my favorites.
Yep. So 95% return on investment, $20 million budget, $19 million at the box office.
Okay. Yeah, we can safely say that it over time broke even, with DVD and all the rest of it. Actually, a lot of their films probably don't do a massive amount of advertising.
Well, not unless they're up for awards and things, and then I think the studios get behind them. But if they're the smaller films, no, they wouldn't be advertising much.
Funnily enough, the films that I remember that have done the most advertising, TV and otherwise, with the coming soons and all that, where it would have actually cost them money, were films like Intolerable Cruelty and Burn After Reading, films that had the stars in them.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, I don't think the Coens are too concerned with that. I think they work mainly like on, that sort of word of mouth type thing where it's people who are fans of their work.
So they're the only 4 films that had a return on investment of less than 100%.
Less than, yeah.
Yep. Now, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is a Netflix film, so couldn't get any information on budget or on box office there. So I've just basically left that off, or I've put it as 100%. I assume they would have got their money back from Netflix.
Anything's possible.
Yep. So going in at number 13 is Intolerable Cruelty, a 202% return on investment, $60 million budget, $121 million at the box office. So even though the biggest budget, as we were talking about before, they did get, $121 million back at the box office.
Again, they had 3 major draw cards as far as names in it. Clooney, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Jeffrey Rush at the time. I think it's a very decent comedy, but probably not quite up to their standards as far as I saw it. It didn't have that much of an impact on me.
No, I don't think it's one that they wrote, and it sort of didn't really feel like a Coen Brothers film. It felt more like a studio film that they'd been paid to make.
Yeah.
Number 12 is Lady Killers, and that's 220% return on investment. The budget on that was $35 million. I was going to say only $35 million because, Tom Hanks was in it, and a box office of $77 million. So that's number 12.
Yeah, the budget there kind of makes sense with the sort of the look of the film, and that I would say maybe the majority of it was filmed on set.
Yep.
And I assume Tom Hanks didn't take a massive salary for this one because he probably wanted to work with them, and let's just say this is the only time he worked with them. So I don't think they were terribly happy with this film themselves. And again, this is probably the only 2 that were remakes, is The Lady Killers and True Grit.
The only 2 that I can think of. A lot of the times they've written them themselves, or they've based it on other stories and things like that.
And that's really where they're at their best, when they either adapt some sort of novel or story or something and write the screenplay, and not so much when they use other people's or remake other films. Even though True Grit is a very good film. But The Lady Killers for me was a major disappointment.
Yeah. Me too. I've seen the original, and it's not like it was a fantastic film, but it was so much better than this one.
Again, I didn't understand why it needed to be remade.
No.
It wasn't that good in the first place. It was okay,
the
original. And this one was, I have to say, the one thing that I disliked the most about it was Tom Hanks' performance.
Yeah, him and his facial features, or his facial hair.
Yeah, it was trying too hard. It was way over the top, and it just did not work. And it still, made it into the film. So
if they wanted to make a film about KFC, then he probably would have been perfect for Colonel Sanders.
Yeah.
But it just was just a silly, I don't know, very, very two-dimensional, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I remember that it had fairly bad sort of word of mouth, so I'm surprised that it actually, brought back double the budget.
Tom Hanks, people go, well, we'll go to the cinema, we'll watch something. Tom Hanks is in it, we'll watch it.
Now, this film would have been just as good or just as bad with almost anyone else, in that role. But they could have cast so much better and made it a little bit different. But again, I don't understand why this film needed to be remade.
No, me neither. So number 11 was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? 276% return on investment. So we're starting to get into some pretty good numbers anyway.
Yeah, some nice profits from these ones.
Yeah. $26 million budget. possibly a lot of that going to Clooney, and the box office just under 72 million.
No, I actually think that Clooney didn't take much here. I think this is a fairly low budget for this type of film. Because again, they created the whole kind of world.
Yeah, Depression era, yeah.
Yeah. And also it has a lot of characters. No, very, very good film. But we'll be talking about it soon anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Number 10 was their first film, Blood Simple. Had a budget of $1.5 million, brought in $4.2 million, so 282% return on investment. Very good for a first film.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it had limited releases. So it was released, re-released, I think, a couple times. It would have made a lot more money after that on DVD and stuff. So this one made money for them. And it was one of those things, the gift keeps on giving because it just kept paying off on a 1.5 million budget. That's pretty amazing.
Well, it is.
But I almost assumed that at the time this was shot, Frances McDormand was not yet married to one of them.
I think they might have met on this film because they married in 84 and this was released late 84.
Yeah, and it had, was it John Getz in the lead role? Had Dan Hedaya, I think, in the sort of other role in it. And
Emmett Walsh. Well, the other four main parts.
Fantastic film. On so very little. 1.5 million is not so little. But for the things they did with this film, yeah, you could already see how massive a potential they have to make some amazing stuff.
Yep, that's right. And one interesting bit of information about this is that it's probably the only film that's ever been released where the director's cut is actually 3 minutes shorter than the feature release was. So they actually cut some of it out when they released the director's cut. So number 9, Hail Caesar. $22 million budget, $64 million at the box office, so 291% return on investment.
Yeah. Now, and again, it probably would have done a lot better if it was released sort of in the better days of cinema. But this was just when we were going into streaming, and yeah, it was very quickly, I think, released onto Netflix. A bit of a recent favorite of mine because, again, I only saw it recently, probably a few weeks back. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 8 was Inside Llewyn Davis. So that was the $11 million budget and $33 million box office. So I guess that's a 300% return on investment.
Pretty low budget, I have to say, for a film like that. And I'm surprised it brought in that much. It's definitely not for everyone. It's a very, very artistic film. And it is almost made for artists.
Possibly. So that explains a lot because I'm not an artist and not towards the top end of mine. So number 7, The Big Lebowski, budget of $15 million, box office $47 million, so 313% return on investment. So good film and good numbers.
I'm only guessing, but I would have to say that once factoring in DVD and all the rest of it, it would be number 1.
Huge DVD, particularly for stoners.
Yeah, well, and all around, it's really probably people's favorite. Not necessarily best film on everyone's list, but it is a lot of people's favorite Coen Brothers film. It's a massive cult following.
Yeah, well, 8.1 on IMDb, so it does rate very highly with a lot of people, including myself.
And it has John Turturro as Jesus, so, Not the Jesus, but Jesus.
So, number 6, A Serious Man, $7 million budget for $31 million at the box office, so 443%.
Yeah.
Very low budget for the time that it was made.
Yeah, very similarly to Inside Llewyn Davis. For me, it's a very, very artistic film. I am surprised it actually made that much. I'm less surprised that it was made for that much. Less names in this one.
Yep.
The main role was Michael Stuhlbarg, and he was not at all a name. Like a lot of people would have recognized his face from other films, maybe from a little bit of TV, but he was fantastic and one of my favorites. I like it when they go, all artistic on us. And this is definitely one of them.
And one of my favorites, as far as people in it, Richard Kind, George Clooney's ex-flatmate.
Yeah, he's always funny.
He is.
Yeah.
Yep, so number 5, Burn After Reading, $37 million budget, so one of their higher budgets, $164 million at the box office, so 443% return on investment, the same as A Serious Man.
Yeah, and probably both the most, or maybe the sort of the biggest lineup of all their films, having John Malkovich and Brad Pitt, and I think Clooney's in there as well.
Clooney as well, yes.
Many, many others. It's a very, very long list. So I'm not really surprised it did that well. One of their better comedies, I think.
Yeah. And very easy to put a trailer together that you want to see.
Yeah.
Well, number 4, we're getting close to the top. 4 is Raising Arizona. $6 million budget, $29 million at the box office, so 483% return on investment.
Yeah, and this is more to do with the time. It was in 87. So
Yep. A lot of DVD and stuff as well there, though.
yeah, and Nicolas Cage,
Holly Hunter.
and it had a lot of other really good actors in it. Sort of a real cult film, and would have made a lot in all kinds of other sales aside for cinema. So it would have made a massive profit over time.
Yep. Number 3, True Grit. So $38 million budget, which wasn't too bad. $252 million at the box office. So that's their highest grossing film, and a 663% return on investment.
And it's almost a flip on what I just said about an 87 film. This one was made in 2010. Budgets were higher at that time, but cinema was also sort of more of at its peak as far as money making. And this one had, Jeff Bridges in the main role, a lot of Oscar talk, which really helped. I think that when it was announced that it was nominated for a few awards, it really shot up as far as in the cinemas.
Yeah, would have got a second wind. Yeah.
Really good. Matt Damon's in there, I believe.
He is, yeah, third major part, and also Josh Brolin.
Yeah, who is in a lot of their films.
Yeah.
So fantastic actors. A lot of them around the peak of sort of popularity, namely Jeff Bridges and Matt Damon.
Yep.
A very good film, but a lot of that is really timing, I think.
Yeah, true.
A lot of those numbers. Yeah.
And number 2, well, I was going to say another Western. It's not quite another Western, but No Country for Old Men, $25 million budget, $172 million at the box office, so 688% return. So again, very good numbers for that.
And very similar to True Grit in a way, because that also had a lot of Academy attention.
It did, yep.
So that really helped it in cinemas. I think the budget might be a little bit low for a film that looks like it. Again, Brolin, Tommy Lee Jones, fantastic cast. And a massive one is Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh, which became like a real sort of even cult character.
Yep.
And it's also got, I think, both a bit of a favorite for both of us in Woody.
Yes, yeah, Woody's usually pretty good.
Woody Harrelson, he was great in this.
Kelly MacDonald was good in it too.
True. Yeah, fantastic film and deserves everything it gets, I think.
Yeah, and then the number 1 film was Fargo. $7 million budget, $61 million at the box office, 871% return on investment, and that's in 1996, so very good numbers.
Yeah, the budget is almost right, because again, it has a lot of names in it now maybe, but at the time they wouldn't have been so massive, and a lot of sort of character actors who tend to not warrant a huge payday, like Buscemi and Peter Stormare, even William H. Macy. Frances McDormand, possibly her best role.
Yep.
It's a great film, and it also has that sort of cult-ish status where, it made probably a shit ton of money on DVD and all the rest of it afterwards. But going back just a tad, with No Country for Old Men, it won Best Film at the Oscars, didn't it?
It did. Best Picture, yes.
Yeah.
And also Best Director.
Yeah, and a lot of people were upset about it because it beat out There Will Be Blood.
Yep.
So, it was one of those. It's probably the most successful film in that regard.
Yes, it was, because not only was it Best Picture, it was also Best Director, and it was also Best Adapted Screenplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was a massive one. Fargo being number 1 as far as that percentage situation is not a big surprise. So shall we kick into our worst section?
We will. Well, I'll go first, if you like, with my worst film. That was Lady Killers.
Same with me. Lady Killers is my 18th, and for all the reasons that we've already named.
Exactly. It was the standout for being unremarkable, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's, for Coen Brothers, I would rate it maybe about somewhere between a 6 and a 6.5, which to me is, for them, is very low.
Yeah, very disappointing film. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My number 17 was the Hudsucker Proxy.
My 16th.
Yeah, and from what we were talking about before, it was a bit of a disappointment for me. I don't know why it rated 7.2, but for me, not one of their better ones.
Yeah, I would have it at under a 7, possibly closer to a 6.5. Very disappointing. I was very excited about it coming out. Paul Newman, one of my favorite all time, and having Tim Robbins and Jennifer Jason Leigh, I just thought it was going to be one of those, amazing Coen Brothers films, and it wasn't. It was just okay.
That's it. Yeah. So what was your number 17?
My 17th is Intolerable Cruelty.
My 16. So there you go.
And again, I didn't hate it. I actually found it very entertaining, but at the same time, it didn't really quite feel like a Coen Brothers film to me, which kind of dropped it down a bit.
Well, and it's not as good as the others, is it?
Yeah, it's okay. Again, it's about somewhere between 6.5 and a 7, so that's not bad.
Yep.
So our bottom three
Well, they're
are the
basically
same films. Yeah, I can kick in if you want with my 15th.
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, I didn't really rate 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 because I sort of struggled to put them in any sort of order. So you give me your 15 back and then I'll join in when we get to the top 10.
No problem. My 15th is True Grit.
Ooh.
Yeah, again, it's a bit lower than I would have thought because it also has Jeff Bridges, who's one of my faves.
Yep.
There again, it's a remake. It spoke to me a bit less than others. And I love a Western too. But as far as their list, they just made other films that connected with me more. But it doesn't mean that I don't think it's a fantastic film.
Yeah. Well, having said that, I won't tell you mine. That's my number 9.
Okay. Yeah, it's in your top 10. But again, I don't think it's that much. Yeah, it's not as much of a discrepancy as it may seem.
No.
Because I think we would rate it similarly out of 10. Like for me, it would be about a 7.5.
Yeah, well, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a little bit higher, but I thought very good. But then when I'm trying to put this list together, as I was saying, the top 5, 6, they sort of, for me, were a little bit better than from 6, 7 through to 15. So on another day, this could have been higher or lower.
Yeah, I agree. My number 14, Burn After Reading.
Yeah, that was, out of my top 10. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's hilarious. It feels more like a Coen Brothers film, in comparison to, say, Intolerable Cruelty. But they both have that more of a polished look than other films.
Yep.
So they look a little bit more Hollywood. But I really, really did enjoy it. I thought Malkovich was fantastic. I thought Brad Pitt stole the show. It was just fantastic.
Well, even Clooney was very good in it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting film, but not in my top 10.
Yeah, same here. 14th. Again, I would rate it somewhere between 7.5 to 7.7, say.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. But number 14.
Yeah.
From here on, my top 13 was just really, really tough. But at number 13, I have Blood Simple.
I rated it much higher.
I rated it 13, mainly because, again, it was their first, and I think that it has, it's a lot less polished than other work of theirs.
Yeah.
I still rate it about an 8 out of 10. So 13 films rate for me 8 and higher. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And again, I loved it, but it's maybe a little bit less memorable for me than others. And it was a really, really tough list to put together. So it's like something had to drop, and I had to find a reason to drop it. But today it's at 13. Like you said, next week it might be higher. I'm not sure. Fantastic film.
It is. And something interesting about that film is that they actually put a 2-minute trailer together for the film, and then they went around trying to raise money from that trailer. So they raised $750,000 in about a year, and that was enough to get them started. That was on the advice of Sam Raimi, their friend. And I'm not sure, but I think that once the film was made, at least they were having a double feature with his film.
Which would have been Evil Dead, probably.
Yes, it was Evil Dead. And it was also the film debut of Frances McDormand. As we were saying, they were married. Joel and Frances McDormand were married later that year.
Oh, wow. That was quick. It's a great film. It probably has the least amount of characters out of their films. It's a bit more contained.
Yep.
There's maybe 4 or 5 kind of main and supporting characters. Again, 8+ out of 10. Amazing film, but it's 13 on my list. We'll jump into my 12th.
Yes.
Again, this is one that I thought would rate a lot higher, and I was surprised myself because, again, it's an 8+ out of 10 for me, and that's Raising Arizona.
Yeah, so that did get into my top 10. Yeah, not that much higher than you. I've rated that at 8. So I was a bit surprised when I was first doing the list. I thought it would have been higher than that. I thought it probably would have been top 5, but having another look at it, it's still a very good film, but they've done better since.
Yeah. I think a lot of their films around, sort of more recent times are very, very underrated. They're great films that did not have the same exposure or cult following as some of the older ones. They might in the future, but they're still fantastic films. So that's why I think films like that get sort of bumped down, like Blood Simple, Raising Arizona. They've been around for a long time. Some of them have lost a little bit of that
shine.
I don't know, maybe charm, mystique,
Yep.
That they've had. The others sort of are technically a little bit better, and just the fact that they can keep up that kind of standard is amazing. So,
it is, yeah.
And similarly, my number 11, it was also one that is a bit of a surprise that it ended up outside the top 10. That's Miller's Crossing.
Yeah, well, it was outside my top 10 as well. I probably would have rated it, similarly, around about 11 or 12. It's a very good film. It just didn't really, speak to me like it does with some people. Some people rate it really, really highly. For me, it was a very good film, but not one of their best.
Well, the performances, are great. The way it's shot is fantastic. The way the story is told is very interesting. They're just fantastic storytellers again. Having Gabriel Byrne in the main role and a great performance from Albert Finney and Masha Gay Harden. It has Steve Buscemi in there, of course, yep. as he tends to pop up somewhere. Yeah, it's just a great film. I have it, again, it's about 8.2, 8.3 out of 10.
Yep.
But it's not in my top 10.
No, me neither.
So here we are, our top 10s.
Yes.
Since I've been prattling on about my 11 to 15, I'll let you get started.
Okay, well, my number 10 is Hail Caesar. Only rated 6.3 on IMDb. I rate it much higher.
Ding, 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 bingo. That's my top 10.
All right.
Yeah.
We agree with one.
Number 10.
Well, actually, we've agreed with a couple, so yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's a fairly recent film, so only saw it recently, but geez, straight away at about 8.5, I think, out of 10.
Yeah.
just a fantastic film. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's up there. It might creep up in the future as well. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is another recent one, and that's The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yeah, really good film. I rated that 4. So I rated that a bit higher than you. That was in my top 5 or 6 that weren't budging. I just watched it recently. I was so impressed with the different stories and how good they were, and how you just get into it and you just be feeling it for the character, and then they die. And then you move to the next character. They just did it so well.
Yeah. Now, for me, it's above 8.5, so probably about an 8.7. And it's number 9, which is crazy. But yep. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought some of it was just so poetic, just beautiful. Yeah. Especially that story with, the thespian with no limbs.
Oh, well, there's that one. Even the girl that killed herself because she thought the Indian was going to get her.
Yes. Very tragic. But the build-up of the way they tell the story was just fantastic.
Oh, it is. And there's a couple of really funny bits in there where right at the start, the cowboy doesn't have a gun, and he's just kicking the table, which knocks the guy's hand up, and he's shooting himself again and again and again. I thought that was very, very well done and funny. And then the other bit was it James Franco that was going to be hanged?
Yes.
Yeah. So when he escapes the hanging, and then he's being hanged again for a different thing, and he looks across at a guy who's also being hanged, who's crying, and he says, "First time." It's just hilarious.
Yeah, that was very good. And again, the opening story with Tim Blake Nelson as Buster Scruggs was just fantastic. Yeah, just something again. This one they really put the whole storyteller thing into effect, by telling different stories.
Yes.
But yeah, it's even hard to say which one was my favorite. I like the Tom Waits one as well, with the gold.
Yes. Oh, because the cinematography was just fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So wide open.
Yeah, and just each and every story was great and well acted and interesting. And you're talking about the James Franco story. It was Stephen Root was the guy who worked at the bank. That was hilarious. So yeah,
it was. Yeah.
Pan shot. And again,
and then James Franco saying it wasn't fair because he had armor on.
Yeah. No, just fantastic. Like I said, just because it's 9th on my list doesn't mean I don't rate it highly. I rate it very, very highly.
My 9th was True Grit, which we already spoke about.
And again, it's not that far, I think. I mean, it's my 15th, but as far as the sort of rating, it is not far.
That's right. My 8th, which we've already spoken about, was Raising Arizona. So what's your 8th?
Well, my 8th is one that I wanted to rate a lot higher, and I actually think deserves to be rated higher. But I just kept flipping back and forth and ended up leaving it there. It's the first film that I would rate at least a 9, which is crazy. 8 films, 9 out of 10. I never do that. But that's A Serious Man.
Yep.
Again, one of their sort of more artistic films. It's sort of seeped in subtext. And I just love that about their writing and about their films. And I can see myself, just sitting and reading the script and loving it. So, fantastic film.
Yeah, for me, not inside my top 10. Good film. Not being as artistic as you, obviously. I didn't relate as well with me. So, yeah, I rate some of their other films higher. But still, it's a good film. 7th is No Country for Old Men. I rated that probably not as highly as some, seeing as it won Best Picture and Best Director and Best Everything. But for me, look, there was just one scene in it where Josh Brolin got killed and they didn't show it, and it just, it's the one percenters, for me, that just it dragged it out a little bit, but still a very good film.
I agree on that scene. I think that's the one big flaw in the film.
Yep.
But I still think that flaw was not enough to knock it down enough from being this sort of near masterpiece. Even if just for the coin flip scene, with Anton Chigurh and the attendant at the store.
Yep.
Yeah, no, just some of the most amazing writing. The Anton Chigurh character, the scene with him and Woody Harrelson in the hotel.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just so much amazing in that film that it rates a lot higher for me. I won't say where yet, but it'll come up soon. My 7, and I can expect people to tell me I'm an idiot, but it's Fargo.
Yeah, I think you're an idiot. I won't say where I rated it, but I rated it higher than 7.
Again, I'm rating this film above a 9 out of 10. So, it's just, as far as my favorites, I tend to enjoy their artistic films more than their straight stories. So I like a lot of subtext. I think Fargo is a very interesting, entertaining story. The thing about it is, in a way, the only sort of, it's not really a flaw because it's just not that type of film. But I think it lacks the originality that I like in their work in some way, as far as the story goes. Because it's similar to some stories that I've seen before in suspense thrillers. The great thing about it, again, is the way they write characters. And I think the thing that made this one go above a 9 out of 10 for me, which is like the secret weapon of this film, to me, is Steve Buscemi. He's got more of a role in this one, and his reactions and what happens to him and how he acts are just fantastic throughout. I think he's the one that kind of steals the show, even though I think Frances McDormand is fantastic.
Oh, particularly, playing it pregnant, it just adds that extra layer. And even William H. Macy, he is so good in this.
And Peter Stormare as well, without saying terribly much. And that's the thing also about Frances McDormand. She does a lot of acting here when she's actually not talking. Some facial expressions, some reactions, just fantastic. It's really Coen brothers, at their best. But as far as the story itself, it speaks to me a little bit less. And again, above a 9 out of 10. I mean, come on. Just because it's 7th on my list doesn't mean I think it's bad in any way. So I think it's a fantastic film.
Yeah, that's true. And I rated higher. I'll get to that later. So my number 6 was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Same with me. And it felt a little low. But again, at somewhere about 9.2 out, 9.3 out of 10, where are you going to go?
I know, and it is such a good film. Clooney is good in it. He's, a bit of a caricature of a lot of things and stuff, but the music, the look of it, the Depression era stuff, the almost slapstick comedy, it's such a good film, isn't it?
They do love a bit of a musical, don't they?
They do.
I mean, yeah, even though none of their films are specifically musicals, there's quite a few of them that have that element.
There's a lot of music in them, yeah, and they use it well.
Buster Scruggs and Hail Caesar, they both have that, which is kind of almost unexpected. I've listened to the CD of the soundtrack for Oh Brother many, 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 many times. The Saggy Bottom Boys.
Yep.
Yeah, just great. Man of what's it called?
Of Constant Sorrow.
Constant Sorrow, that's it. Yeah, and it plays fantastically into the meaning of actually a lot of their films. Yeah, in this one, especially the quartet of performances of the top 4 guys, just fantastic. John Goodman, George Clooney, Tim Blake Nelson, and Turturro.
And look, I'm sure I've said this before, but Clooney playing a sort of Clark Gable-esque character, and the fact that most of them sang, but he wasn't good enough to sing, so he had to just move his mouth, whereas the others actually have decent singing voices.
Yeah, and it didn't hurt the film at all. It wasn't really...
Not at all.
Felt. So it might be, more of a top 5er for me, but I ended up putting it at 6th anyway.
Yeah. Well, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is The Man Who Wasn't There.
Oh, yeah. Not in my top 10, but it's still a good film.
Yeah, the whole sort of noir feel, black and white. Again, Frances McDormand is in there, but Billy Bob Thornton, just fantastic. He just embodied that character, and it was so believable, and it worked, so very well. And also some of the, supporting characters. Seeing Gandolfini again was just, it just reminds you how much of a talent he is.
Yeah,
it was.
I wouldn't mind doing one of those on him at some stage, because he's had some very good smaller roles in a lot of very good films.
Michael Badalucco as well, in an interesting role.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those films that was probably slightly lower budget at the time as well, because again, there's fewer characters in it. But Scarlett Johansson, and I think it was Richard Jenkins, I think, is in it.
Yeah,
it was one of my favorites. It's in my top 5. I had to get it in there because I just love that film. Again, a 9.2, 9.3 roughly out of 10, similar to the past 2.
Yep.
I mentioned from Fargo and Oh Brother, but I just kind of is a little bit more of a favorite of mine. I bumped it up a little bit.
Yeah, nice. So my number 5 is Barton Fink.
My number 4.
Ah, okay, good. Very good film.
Very, 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 very close to a masterpiece.
Mm.
There's just sort of just such an artistic feel to it, and just the way they put it together. It's one of the few films I think of theirs where you're kind of guessing a lot of the way through what's going on. You kind of wonder, is this real? Is this not? What's happening here? Why is this character doing this? Some things are just seem off kilter while you're watching it, and it just keeps you in it to find out, just curious enough. And again, the performances were great. I think John Goodman stole the show in this.
Yep.
Turturro is in the main role. Was it Michael Lerner?
Yep.
Who played the sort of studio chief kind of guy? He was fantastic. Yeah, I thought that it was one of the best roles I've seen him in, and he just played it so well over the top, and just where it should have been for that film.
Yeah, Mr. Monk showed up again as well. Tony Shalhoub.
Yeah, he's always good. And he was also in The Man Who Wasn't There.
He was, yeah,
a good role. Yeah. Also John Polito. Yeah, Barton Fink. I watched it again recently, and I'm glad I did because I forgot some things about it. I've only seen it once before. Probably shortly after it was released to DVD. So somewhere in the early 90s, because it was released in 91.
Yep.
And I haven't seen it since. Just kind of didn't happen. So I kind of forgot a lot. So it would have rated a bit lower. Upon revisiting, it just kind of reminded me how great of a film it really is. So
yeah, it is. And it must be one of the Coen brothers' favorite films as well, because they have this plan on the back burner to make a follow-up film from this, but they're waiting for John Turturro to get old enough to play Barton Fink in the early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gone through the McCarthyism thing of having to name and shame communist sympathisers and all that, and starting to get into the hippie region, but they're waiting for him to actually be old enough to play the role. That was your 4?
Yeah.
So my 4 we've already spoken about, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Mm-hmm. It's high, but I can't hate on it because I love the film.
Yeah, so your 3, what's that?
Well, my number 3, again, one that, I don't know, for some reason I would have thought would have ranked higher. Upon just kind of thinking about doing this episode, it immediately popped to mind, and I thought it was going to be number 1. But it's not. It's number 3, and that's The Big Lebowski.
Yeah, well, my number 2, so we're pretty close.
It's one of those, the second Jeff Bridges film with them.
Yep.
And the dude is just, maybe their most well-known character. Yeah, most iconic character. It's just one of those films. It's just that good. It's not in the style of films that I like from them. As far as I like more, I like that artistic meta film, something with.
This is more in your face.
It's less subtext. It's more comedy, but it's kind of black comedy. Such a great supporting cast. This is almost the one that brings everyone to the party. John Turturro is in there, and John Goodman, and Buscemi, and it goes on and on and on.
I know, and that relationship between John Goodman's character and Steve Buscemi's character is just fantastic, isn't it? It's like John Goodman just keeps telling him to shut up, and he doesn't want to listen to him and stuff. Obviously, he is always listening to him, and
it's almost like a husband and wife type thing,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, Julianne Moore's very good in it, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's good in everything.
Yeah. I think that had he not passed away, he probably would have been in a lot more Coen Brothers films. He's one of my favorite all-time actors.
Yeah.
It's just always great to see him. Always.
It is. And surprisingly, Tara Reid was actually not bad in this. She's usually terrible, but in this she wasn't bad.
I don't think she's, that terrible. I just think she's not necessarily an actress with a lot of range. But I think that when she's put in a role that's within her range, she tends to be very serviceable. So I think she was in this one. It's just such a funny film, and so many very, very strange characters. And, Julianne Moore's character, for example, it's just like out of this world. My favorite appearance in this is Sam Elliott.
Playing the cowboy at the bar?
Yeah, who's kind of telling the story. I always love seeing him in almost anything. David Huddleston was the Big Lebowski.
Yep.
Just one of those, yeah. Even Mark Pellegrino pops in there, who's a lot of people who are into Supernatural would know.
Well, even Flea turned up.
Yeah, Flea and Peter Stormare, who were part of the threesome of those nihilists, the weird guys. They were so weird. But yeah, Peter Stormare, I think, also a very underrated actor.
He's in a lot of their films too, isn't he?
Yeah. So, I was not surprised that it ended up in my top 10. I was kind of surprised that it ended up as number 3. Probably about a 9.5 out of 10 for me. David Thewlis also was in there somewhere.
Yeah, so that was number 2 for me. So,
what's your number 3?
Oh, my number 3, Blood Simple. So we've already spoken about it.
Wow.
But yeah, I rated it much higher than you. I thought it was, I guess, with what they had to work with, it was such a good film. And perhaps I'm taking that into consideration. But for a first film to be that good.
Okay, I can understand that because it's also the film that showed what they, the potential of what they can do. So,
Yep, small cast. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, my number 2 is No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, and my number 7. So
yeah,
you rated it. I've probably rated it a little low. I think you may have rated it right, but I think you've rated it a little high. But it's definitely in that area, isn't it? It is a really good film. For me, a little flawed.
The one thing that made it flawed for you was, again, that one thing that I think is the flaw in this film. We agree on that. I just don't think that it hurt the film that much, whereas you do. That's, I think, the difference.
Yeah.
But again, all the characters and all that we talked about before, the way it was put together. Barry Corbin, Stephen Root, Garrett Dillahunt, all kind of pop in there as well. It's one of those films. It's both polished and feels like a Coen Brothers film. It felt very much like a Western, I think, which is also why I like it. Probably a lot of people would argue the point that we made about the dude, but Anton Chigurh, is way up there as well as, one of the most iconic characters.
Oh, he definitely is. And I actually quite liked, spoilers, I guess, but I actually quite liked the fact that he got away at the end.
And it's funny because I thought Javier Bardem overacted in this role in a lot of the scenes, but it was so perfect for this weirdo killer.
Oh, very weird.
Yeah. And some of those looks, the eyes, that strangulation scene on the floor, I remember that.
Well, and also the conversation, as you said, with the clerk where he flips the coin and stuff and, for his life, basically, and the guy's not sure that it is for his life, but it obviously is. But even when he's saying, oh, yeah, well, what time do you go to bed? And it's just like, who asks that? And it is such a scary question in that situation.
Well, I enjoyed it so much that I actually spoofed it in my film. So,
yeah.
Because again, I thought some of those lines they can be taken as some sort of a menacing quirk.
Yep.
And also as just as ridiculous comedy, which is where I kind of took it. But yeah. But a great film. A lot of people, like I said, had this whole thing about it winning the Oscar over There Will Be Blood. And again, There Will Be Blood, I think, is just as good of a film.
Yep.
But I'm not sure that any kind of injustice has been made.
I don't either. I thought There Will Be Blood was a better film, but it's not like this was undeserving either.
Yeah, I think they're very even, but very different.
So that's your number 2?
We're just left with our number 1s, I think.
Well, my number 1, we've already spoken about Fargo. I rated that number 1, much higher than your number 7. I think I'm obviously closer to right than you are.
I disagree.
But as we spoke about, very, very good film. So what's your number 1?
Inside Llewyn Davis.
Ooh.
Yeah, me.
No, it's not a terrible film, but outside my top 10. I watched it last night. I couldn't get into it. I didn't like the character.
You're not supposed to.
You're going to tell me why it was such a good film.
Well, again, you're not supposed to like the character. The character is the flaws of that character is part of the whole story. It's a film that shows you what it's like to be an artist who is trying to make it. Again, this is about folk music, and that was their choice in this one. But it could have been any type of artistry, really. Like I said, they do a similar thing in Barton Fink with a writer. In Hail Caesar in a slightly different way, where it's the film industry. But it really is about the eternal struggle of an artist. And the reason this guy is so unlikable is because he gets chances, but he's so uncompromising that he ends up being his own worst enemy. And to me, that's always interesting. But I think it's the most artistic, the most poetic film. And I think the script is just amazing. There's a lot of little, hidden meanings and stuff in here, what people call kind of Easter eggs. It gets better also on repeat viewings. I've seen it about maybe 3 times. I wanted to see it again for this show, but I just couldn't find it for some reason. I've got it somewhere around here. Oscar Isaac is just amazing in it, I think. He just kind of embodies that role. And even though there's like a lot of interesting characters around him, I think that nobody steals the show here. I think he is the show, and he is just that good.
Yeah, well, Justin Timberlake was very bland in it, wasn't he?
I liked him in it.
It was okay, but I'm just saying, talking about stealing the show, he definitely didn't steal the show.
I don't think his character was supposed to, He played it the way he should have played it. I thought he was very good. I liked seeing him.
John Goodman, as always.
John Goodman was a bit more of a scene stealer, or at least maybe attempted scene stealer. Carey Mulligan was good.
Yep.
Garrett Dillahunt he's always great. In a very amusing role, Adam Driver.
Yeah, very small role, wasn't it?
Yeah, but very amusing. Also, Ethan Phillips from Benson back in the day, and a lot of interesting actors, but it wasn't about that. It was just about the story. And I think it was very, very well carried by Oscar Isaac. I don't know. For you, it was slow. For me, I just couldn't keep my eyes off it. The music, I thought, was fantastic. So many good songs. And again, Oscar Isaac is doing the singing himself. So shows, geez, this guy is a bit of a talent that I didn't realize. And this well, I was listening to it. I was like, this guy could be on any sort of, folk charts,
Well, he's got a band.
Yeah. Fantastic. So awesome. It's one of those films. It surprised me that it went this high up my list because it doesn't have the same sort of stature, as a Fargo or No Country for Old Men or a lot of those other ones. But I think it's that good. It is a masterpiece for me. And again, the role by F. Murray Abraham as well.
Yes, small but very good.
And the line he's trying to kind of sell himself to a record executive in F. Murray Abraham, and he listens to the song, and his first reaction is, "I'm not seeing any money there."
That's right. And then he says, we're part of a duo. And he says, yes. And it's like, well, maybe you should get back together again. And, well, the guy jumped off a bridge, so that wasn't possible.
Yeah. Yeah. But what does he say to him? He says, yeah, well, maybe. Yeah. But that's the thing. The yeah, well, maybe there was not just a way to subvert the question or something. It was really meaning, yeah, I might jump off a bridge myself. Yeah. And that's what I like about this film. The subtext is just so strong. It's just the way that some of the reason that he can't get there is to do with timing, and it's to do with how wrong the world is as far as not recognizing true artistry and talent and all the rest of it. But it's also him, just continuously putting his foot in it and being, too precious to do certain things.
And judgmental of others.
Yes. And artist, an artist. For others, it works. For him, not so much. Yeah, and it's just for me, for knowing a lot of people, especially in the indie film industry, it's a perfect portrayal of a lot of people. So it just hit very, very close to home watching it. I was like, yeah, this is exactly kind of how some people are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought they hit it exactly in this one. It's just very precise. And I love the soundtrack. And again, this is the one that was not shot by Roger Deakins, or one of the ones that wasn't. The cinematography, I thought, was pretty amazing. It was so gray, like it was meant to be, so sort of ashen kind of feel. And it was shot by Bruno Del Bonell, who's also an esteemed cinematographer. And I think he did a fantastic job in this.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not sure if you've talked me into watching it again or not, but you've definitely put your case forward. I think we've gone for a bit over an hour, so we better wrap it up.
I thought it would take us way longer to go through this. Judging by past shows. Yeah.
Yeah, guess starting at the bottom for me, Lady Killers was my least favourite. The Hudsucker Proxy was my second least favourite, my 17th favourite, I guess. Intolerable Cruelty was 16. And then going to my top 10, I've got Hail Caesar at 10, True Grit at 9, Raising Arizona at 8, No Country for Old Men at 7, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou at 6, Barton Fink at 5, Ballad of Buster Scruggs at 4, Blood Simple at 3, The Big Lebowski at 2, and my number one Coen Brothers film was Fargo, or is Fargo.
For me, it was a bit different. The bottom was not. My bottom three are the same as yours, just in different order, but I'll go from worst to best. 18, Lady Killers. At 17, Intolerable Cruelty. And at 16, Hudsucker Proxy. After that, my top 15, as I've expressed before, are all excellent films. I don't think there's any kind of worst here. It's just all good, but they had to be ranked, so I ranked them. Number 15, True Grit. Number 14, Burn After Reading. Number 13, Blood Simple. 12, Raising Arizona. 11, Miller's Crossing. At number 10, my top 10, Hail Caesar. Number 9, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Number 8, A Serious Man. Number 7, Fargo. Number 6, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? At 5, The Man Who Wasn't There. At 4, Barton Fink. At 3, The Big Lebowski. At 2, No Country for Old Men. And my number 1, that will be argued by many people, I'm sure, Inside Llewyn Davis. And I have to say, I get this feeling that Coen Brothers' best is still ahead of them.
I've got no doubt at all that they will probably continue to put out a film every 2 years, and most of them will be really, really good.
I'm not sure yet if I'll, in all the episodes that we do from now on, that I'll have a list that would have so many films above an 8 out of 10.
We better wrap it up.
Yep.
Thanks very much for that, Itai.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'll talk to you again in a week.
Yeah, where we prattle on about something else.
Exactly right. All right. Thanks.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Best and Worst podcast.
We'd like to thank everyone who joined and listened to the show. We appreciate you all and hope you'll keep coming back for following episodes. A big thank you goes out to Tam Heinjus for helping us out tremendously and voicing our intro, and Scott Martin for working his magic on the intro sound edit. Also a big thank you goes out to Asaf Angel for all the help with the logo design. Great work, everyone. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you.
If you like the show, then please recommend the podcast to your family and friends and subscribe, share, follow, leave a comment. You know the drill. For more information, please check out the show notes. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again next week.